We're going to turn to Russia now, where the opposition figure, Vladimir Kara-Murza, today faces a sentence of up to 25 years in prison. He's been accused of state treason, affiliation with an undesirable organisation, and spreading false information about the Russian army. In his closing statement to the court, Mr Kara-Murza compared the court case to Stalinist show trials of the 1930s. Well, for more, I've been talking to Pedro Pizano, an international lawyer with the Democracy and Human Rights Programme at the McCain Institute for International Leadership in Washington, D.C.
He's really been one of the leaders of the fight for a free, just, and safe Russia for many years. And today he sits in prison, and we expect a potential sentence of up to 25 years for telling the truth about Russia and Putin's Russia.
What did Vladimir Kara-Murza say that got him into these legal difficulties?
Well, just before he was detained, a couple of hours before he was detained, and I quote, he said to CNN, "I have absolutely no doubt that the Putin regime will end over this war in Ukraine. Doesn't mean it's going to happen tomorrow." And then he called them a regime of murderers. Just before then, he stood up in Arizona, and he was indicted for this speech, and he said things, for example, and I quote, "When enough people in society are willing to stand up to put an end to the repression, to stand up for their dignity, to stand up for their rights, to stand up for their freedom, all that seeming strength of dictatorships becomes powerless."
And he was one of the people instrumental in leading to America's Magnitsky Act, named after Sergei Magnitsky, who died in prison, a lawyer, a number of years ago. And there is this very odd situation where one of the people subject to sanctions under the Magnitsky Act, which Vladimir Kara-Murza was instrumental in bringing in, is now his jailer.
Correct. Dmitry Kobnov, and he was serving, as you said, as a warden of the prison where Sergei Magnitsky died, and now he's jailing the person who put him on the Magnitsky list, named after Sergei Magnitsky. And it's not only him, right? It's 3 out of 3 people, 2 of which are involved in Sergei Magnitsky murder, who are now involved in jailing the person who put them on that list.
Have you heard from Vladimir Kara-Murza? How is he doing? How is he bearing up with the likelihood, as you see it, of this 25-year sentence?
He still writes for the Washington Post. I think the editor last counted 101 different columns. They published his last statement, a very powerful statement. We're in touch with his wife, his lawyers, and he's suffering. He is in prison, and he had been poisoned twice. The Free Russia Foundation links the poisonings to the Russian regime, and it seems he's developed polyneuropathy because of these poisonings. And so, although he's suffering, he's very defiant, and hopefully his courage reminds us of the liberties we enjoy in other places in the world.
What do you think the case of Vladimir Kara-Murza and his treatment tells us about the wider crackdown there has been on anti-war figures, on anti-war sentiment in Russia?
There's counts between 15,000 to 20,000 people in jail just because they've, spoken up and criticized Russian aggression against Ukraine and other aggressions. So hopefully through these stories and many others, those named and unnamed, we can try to understand what is happening there and hopefully expose it, and hopefully at some point, the ICC indicted Putin. He's an indicted war criminal. Hopefully one day we'll see a free, just, safe, and prosperous Russia, and it's these men and women who hopefully will lead us there.
International lawyer Pedro Pizano there in Washington, D.C.